Johannesburg is famed for the discovery of gold that transformed the fortunes of many, but 120 years later, abandoned mines across the East and West Rand have left behind sprawling mine dumps, some towering over 100 meters. While some are being reclaimed for residual gold, many still scar the landscape. Well, one remarkable exception is a tailings facility in Brakpan, where a once toxic dump now hosts zebra, blesbok, Wildebeest and other wildlife. Well, joining us in the studio is Niël Pretorius, the CEO of DRDGold, to share the story behind this transformation. Hi, Niël. Lovely to have you with us.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for being here.
So what inspired this turning of a mine dump into a nature conservation area?
It's a wonderful coincidence, Linda. We acquired this particular facility in, I think, 2007 or 2008 from Anglo Ashanti. It formed part of the old Ergo operation. And our business model is one of reclaiming old tailings dumps or old mine dumps across the Johannesburg landscape, the ones that you were talking about. And we reached a point where the business at the time in this just to the south of Johannesburg, Crown Mines, was nearing the end of its life. So we needed somewhere to go. And Ergo was the obvious answer for us. We still had millions of tons of material that we could process, but you need somewhere to take it, because you cannot take your old mine waste and redeposit it where you reclaim it. It has to go onto another facility. And the old Brakpan tailings facility was available, and it was the ideal place to do this. Over the years, as the dam grew in height, we sort of followed the rise of the dam with cladding. So you take natural swell in the area and you place it onto the sides of this dam, because if you don't do that, remember, the material that you deposit is extremely fine. It's like a powder, like body powder, baby powder. So if you don't cover the dust, then and there's wind, then the whole area, the whole surrounding area, is just covered in a cloud of dust. And one of the realities of Johannesburg is that communities are moving closer and closer to these mine dumps because there aren't lots of space available for people to settle. And as I say, one of the wonderful coincidences is, as we covered the sides of the slopes of this dam with natural soil, natural vegetation started to then reestablish spontaneously. This was one facility where we didn't have to irrigate. Another facility where we had closer to Nasrec, that was a different story. That was sort of mulching and vegetation and irrigation. This one sort of took care of itself because it's a far more gentle slope. The soil became established, and so did natural vegetation. And then we saw the return of all the small animals. The insects came back, the birds came back, little rodents, small cats, civets, and so forth. All of those started recurring, warthog, etc., etc. Then we got to a point where we decided to put a fence around the entire facility. So this facility is probably about 400 hectares in size, and the land on which it's situated is probably 3 or 4 times that. So let's say 1,500, maybe 2,000 hectares. So we put a concrete palisade fence around the entire facility, which meant no more dogs roaming free, no more. You could basically, the small game was no longer being hunted. And the decision was taken. In fact, we had a conversation because, we all love the outdoors. Everyone who works at our company, we have a love for the outdoors. And we thought, well, why don't we see if some of the natural species, the savanna species, would settle in? And we started to reintroduce a number of species of game, and they seem to flourish. They're doing really well. So, and they don't know that this is an old mine dump. They don't know that they literally half a meter away from old mine waste. They seem to enjoy it there.
Well, how much game do you have now?
Well, we're in the early days. So we introduced a number of species. So obviously there are those that are occurring naturally. As I said, you've got jackal, warthog, or the cat species, bird life, animal life, etc. An abundance of bird life because of the areas around that. You have all sorts of containment ponds and return water dams and so forth. There's a wetland as well. So it's a magnet for bird life. Snakes as well, lots and lots of snakes. But the species that and they're welcome to be there because they form part of this ecosystem. The species that we reintroduced were blesbok. We've got sable antelope, some zebra, blue wildebeest, red wildebeest, and a few others. So and they're reproducing. They're not being hunted. There's ample space for them. So they seem happy, and they seem to have adapted.
So is poaching not a problem that the local community think, that's a nice food source?
It's not, because I mean, this is an active mining facility, so there's some really well organized security. So the site's being patrolled, and the fence is also, you can't get through the fence. It's a very high concrete palisade fence. You actually have to break through the fence. In the past, there was some hunting with dogs that took place and so forth, and snaring of animals, etc. But that's no longer a problem. We're still accommodating some of the local informal farmers. So the pasturing is a big thing among some of those communities, because cattle is capital, or but then it's deemed to be capital, and we allow herds to be brought into the enclave, into the area, but then they need to be taken out again in the evening. So at this stage, they're coexisting, but I think we are going to get to a point where it's going to be all game, and we won't be able to accommodate the pasturing anymore. But there's other land that one could use for that. I mean, I actually went through the register earlier this week, because it's our board meeting next week, and I think we own roughly 8,000 hectares of land in and around the Johannesburg area, and also in Carletonville. So we have a very, very large property portfolio, and then some of that, because it's not core business, is being set aside for corporate social investments and for those kinds of uses.
So what happens, because as you said, they become more and more, that eventually they too much. What would you allow? Would you bring in animals to hunt them? Predators?
No, I think there would probably be some controlled culling at some point or another. And it would probably in all likelihood occur within the context of social capital. So it would become some sort of source of food for communities which in the vicinity. So we'll try to facilitate something like that. And it won't become a sport. It won't become a place for corporates to play. I mean, that's never the intention. We would want to stay true to the whole idea, the concept of sustainable development. And I think it will probably find its way into something along those lines. In the surrounding areas, one of the social investments that DRD has been very involved in is assisting people from the local community. And the whole idea there was really to focus on the poorest of the poor, take that first step out of desperate poverty, was to establish informal farms, and that's actually taken off. It's and some of those are really successful in that particular area. We in fact have a few farmers that have gotten to the point where they're supplying the likes of Pick and Pay and other franchises. So it didn't stay small. Some of them have actually excelled. Others are subsistence. So bringing in another source of food, protein, into that, and putting something together, setting something up to have part of our supply line. It could potentially develop into something like that. The land should be used. It shouldn't be allowed to simply just lie there, because then it starts attracting the wrong kind of attention.
But you also managed, it seems from what you said, to have a good partnership with the local community, to preserve this for them.
Oh yes, no, absolutely. Because of our operations of where they are, and then it's one of the reasons why this particular regime is also followed in terms of environmental containment. There's absolutely no way that we'd be able to conduct our business successfully if we were not aware of, sensitive to the needs of, or at least just the quality of life of our surrounding communities. You cannot be indifferent as to the environmental impacts of your operations if you're right there in the middle of a community. And the reality is that there are a lot of these communities do not have firepower. They can't go to court, and they underrepresented the government and so forth. So if you don't reach out and create an environment which is tolerable or less miserable than what it was when we got there, their only means of really, their only voice is one of civil disorder, so to speak. And that could be very disruptive and become unsafe at some point. So we try to establish, in line with the principles of sustainable development, we really try to establish social capital that's enduring, that is sustainable. People smile when I use the term sustainability, but lots of sustainability programs is really just some sort of a charity almost, and you never can move away from dependency. So we really try to implement something or establish something where communities with the knowledge that's made available, and sometimes a bit of a capital niche, could almost trade themselves into self-sustainability, and hopefully, this could form part of that. It's a program that's been going on for 15 years. In fact, it's been mentioned on one of Alex's previous programs around about 2008, I think was the first mention of that. And then there was a guest who expressed a view on our, the rationale for our existence and whether there was any. But that was a long time ago. But those programs have since, they've grown and they're doing well. And I think there are many community members who do want to self-empower, and they take advantage of that. So as I say, this is never going to be a place for corporates to play. It will very much remain part of, let's call it, that value set, and hopefully it could have some relevance also in that context.
Are there any other of your mine dumps that you're considering a similar project for?
Well, all of the mine dumps, all of the, let's call it the final storage places, the final tailings storage facilities that we have, we practice concurrent rehabilitation. So as the dam increases in height, we sort of follow with vegetation and so forth. And it's something that's been very successful. And you won't be able to do this sort of thing at all of those, but nature is fantastic. Nature is just has a way of just fixing itself if given half a chance. So in most of those instances where we did the vegetation, and the Crown tailings or the Crown complex next to Nasrec is an example of that. That was a program that was started because it became necessary to do that with the communities having moved so close to that facility. And once again, as I said earlier, these are typically communities with no formal voice. It really became necessary for us to change the standards of environmental containment on those dumps. And I remember it must have been 2006 or 2007. It was my first budget after I'd been appointed the CEO of the DRDSA subsidiary in those days. My colleague Henry Ghost is still with us. He came to the budget meeting with this strange request of, we want 16 million rand to start vegetating the Crown tailings. And that's happened, over the last, how many years is that? 15, 20 years, almost 18 years. And it's now to a point where the level of dust nuisance with regards to those communities or for the surrounding communities has diminished considerably to the point of almost not existing. And it went into, it's hundreds of millions of rands that were spent on that facility in order to vegetate, and also then in order to clad and then vegetate. There, I don't think you'll see something similar, but, animals have a way of simply just sort of adapting. And they have. So it's surprising to see the kinds of animals also there. The insect life, obviously, in abundance, the bird life in abundance, rodents, reptiles, snakes, etc., and then small raptors. So these systems fix themselves, as I say, if given half a chance. For us, really, I think the next really big ambition, if given the opportunity to do that, and if these efforts are undermined, and some of them sometimes are, we really want to see the Russell Stream, which is the stream that runs from Braamfontein all the way through to Orlando. We want to see that desalted. That's the next ecosystem that I think needs fixing in Johannesburg, and we can play a role in that regard. And we've been in discussion. We've had some good discussions with the Department of Minerals, where the role that we can play is recognized. In fact, it was at the request that we had this meeting, and a very, very encouraging, constructive meeting. So that's going to be the next big ambition. So Linda, in a few years from now, 10, 15 years from now, hopefully, there'll be 2 or 3 of these large tailings facilities, all of whom are fully cladded. Some of them would be enclosed, and there would be animal life, etc. And there would be a clean Russell Stream that resembles the stream that it once was, and hopefully clear of sewage, clear of industrial effluent, clear of mine silt. If that's all we do, then maybe even that's enough.
That is such a nice positive story, and it's so nice to hear. But Niël, we can't have you in the studio with asking you about DRDGold and how you're doing and how you're faring with the electricity problems that used to, miners and companies used to have in Joburg and sometimes still have. And also the rise in gold prices and the geopolitical risks. So can we ask you, first of all, how's DRDGold doing? Gold price is soaring, isn't it?
Yeah, the gold price, when I started working for DRD was 2003, and we were trying to keep the business going with a gold price of, was it 65,000 Rand a kilo at the time? Gold is now selling for somewhere in the region of 1.9 million Rand a kilo. I mean, that is just, I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime. In order for us to really optimize our ore body, our resource, we've got about 600 million tons of mine waste stockpile, both here in Johannesburg and also in the Carletonville area. In order to do that, some of the infrastructure that we have in place is just getting too small, and some of it's also reaching the last stages of its useful use. The tailings dam that we were talking about now, the Brakpan tailings facility, that is, we've essentially started the closure of that facility now. It's going to be around for maybe another 2.5 to 3 years. We'll maybe add another 10 meters or so to the dam, to the current height. And then it's going to be decommissioned, and we're building other facilities to substitute the Brakpan tailings facility. Those facilities and some of the capital investments that we're making out in Carletonville will hopefully add another 15 to 18 years to the life of mine of both our Ergo operation as well as our Far West Gold recovery operations out in Carletonville. It's a lot of capital that's been spent. Our company has a market capitalization of roughly $1.3 billion, and we're spending a decent percentage of that, or an amount in terms of, in a proportion to our market capitalization, probably around or close to 25-30% of our caps going into capital in reinvestment programs. Could in fact even be a little bit more. Try to do the quick conversion in my head. We're able to do that because of this gold price. So the company is producing, so it's obviously generating cash flows, and those cash flows are such that it's placing us in a position to invest the better part of 2.5 to 3 billion Rand in capital infrastructure per year, and we'll continue doing that for another 2 years. And then we'll have the infrastructural platform to continue, on this journey and treat more of these mine dumps. I mean, the story doesn't end with the tailings deposition facility that's being vegetated and that now offers an alternative, if somewhat peculiar, ecosystem to natural species. But it's also the cleaning up of all of these old mine dumps. There are several of those. And actually, I'm doing a list of all of these dumps now as part of the Brussels Stream conversation of where they are and which of those still pose a nuisance in terms of dust and so forth. And it's hundreds of hectares that have been cleared, and more hundreds of hectares that will be cleared and that will become available for use. So DRD is taking advantage of this gold price to position itself in such a way that it will be able to, let's call it, execute that mandate, so to speak, whilst at the same time hopefully offering a decent opportunity for investors to earn a return.
So the geopolitical risk at the moment is good for you because the gold price is high. The instability actually favors you at the moment.
It does. I mean, I think the patterns that we saw in gold investments in gold and physical gold have really changed in the last few years. I remember years back, 5, 8, 10 years back, whenever there was some sort of political instability, global instability that impacted the supply of energy, the supply of oil, or if it was in some sort of a sensitive area, then you would see a spike in the gold price. And that was driven by Western sentiment, so to speak. But then once it stabilized and once the West lost interest in gold, then you would see that price absolutely tank. So the gold price went sky high and then came back with a roar, came crashing back. And then suddenly it changed, and it changed radically. There were certain jurisdictions that started accumulating gold as rapidly as the West was dumping it. And they did that for a variety of reasons, and one of those being that they probably didn't like the fact that so much of their foreign reserves were held in dollars, and they wanted some other alternative currency as a hedge for dollar weakness. especially since America just started, feeding all of this fake money into the economy. And that sort of disrupted the dynamics of the gold price, and of course the gold price to rebase at considerably higher levels from about 3, 4, 5 years ago onwards. So the geopolitical instability now adds to that. So on the one hand, you've got this change in dynamics of jurisdictions accumulating gold and supporting the gold price at much higher levels than I thought that they would continue doing that. And then on top of that, the West wants to hedge the purchase parity, the currency purchase parity, and also maybe buy a bit of gold. So it's a very good time for the gold price, but not only because of geopolitical instability, because it's just a different construct in global economic dynamics. And we're in the position to take advantage of that. And I'm glad that we are, because, mining in South Africa, as you pointed out, is 120, 130 years old. In fact, DRD had its 130th anniversary this year. And mining did a lot for our economy. We're an economic powerhouse in the African continent because of gold mining. But there's also a legacy that is not what it should be, and that's the environmental legacy. And I think the role that we get to play is to sustainably and profitably, and for the benefit of a variety of stakeholders, including investors, we get to do something about that and to roll back that legacy. And it's a privilege to be part of that. It really is.
Well, Niël Pretorius, thanks for speaking to us. That was a fascinating look at the gold price and what you're doing and this amazing work you're doing to rehabilitate the mine dumps.
Thanks very much, Linda. Thanks for the opportunity.